So we're going to talk about DNA today. So the first thing I want to show you is this great DNA model because I think it really gives you this idea of what DNA is, right? DNA stands for deoxyribonucleic acid. So what is it? Well, at this point, you should know that DNA is the blueprint of life. It's a genetic material. It's the stuff inside every living thing that is the instructions for how to build that living thing. Build with what? We don't have cinder blocks. We don't have wood, but how to build our cellular structures, which make up our tissues, right? Groups of cells that work together, which make up our organs, which are the different types of tissue that work together, such as blood tissue with fat tissue, with nerve tissue, to execute different functions. If you're an eyeball, it sees and helps you perceive your environment visually. Your ears help you hear different sounds, movements of air. We can move our muscles, right? Move our bones to affect and do different things for movement in some particular way. None of this happens without the instructional code. So, DNA stands for deoxyribonucleic acid. And deoxyribo means this backbone sugar here. Okay, it's a sugar. These little orangey red things out here are the sugars. By the way, this is the molecular structure of what DNA looks like. And what's really nice is you can really pivot around and get a good three-dimensional view of what's happening here. Okay, so again, the outsides, and you can kind of see here, it kind of spins around the outsides and it's spinning like this. And if I keep turning it, you can kind of see that shape. If I keep following this line, I can follow it to the end, which is right here. I can follow the other side of it coming this way, coming in the opposite direction. And as I spin it, it becomes more clear to see that. This is that backbone structure. It's a sugar and it's a phosphate. And the phosphates and the sugars are linked together on this outside. And that really holds the two ends of the DNA. Now, the middle part are the base pairs, they call them. You can see this blue and this white coming down the middle. And as I spin the molecule, you can really see that there's this middle rung structure. Okay? And we call this the middle of a ladder. Like a ladder's got two ends and then it's got these rungs down the middle. Well, this doesn't exactly look like a ladder. In some places it kind of does, but then you get to a point like here and you go, wait a second, what's going on? And this is where the ladder twists. And so you get this twisted ladder structure. So if you imagine this up-down sides with these rungs going across, and you were to grab each end of it and twist it, you would get this double helix, they call it, this double twisted ladder structure. Okay? And the reason they're showing all these little circles with these little lines through it is because they're showing the molecular structure. They're showing you how the atoms are bound together as molecules and how the molecules are linked together. So during the outside, which is more structurally sound, we've got these covalent bonds, if you remember from physical science. And in the middle, we have these weaker hydrogen bonds, which is very important because for a DNA molecule to copy itself, we just learned that in cell division, every cell needs to get a copy of the nucleus. And when we say the nucleus, we mean the genetic material inside the nucleus. In particular, these chromatin is normally the state that the DNA is in, the genetic material is in. It's loosely coiled through most of the cell's life cycle during all its interphase. And then at the end of interphase, the DNA copies itself, getting ready for cell division. And then after that, the chromatin condenses into these rod-like chromosomes. And then that gets divided, and so that we end up with two new cells, each with an identical set of genetic material. Well, when we talk about what these chromosomes are, they are made up of DNA, these strands of DNA here. And they just, a lot of DNA wounding in and of itself, and you get these rod-like structures all made of DNA. So whether we talk about DNA, we talk about genes, we talk about chromosomes, we talk about chromatin, it's all the same stuff, just in different forms. And DNA is the basic block, And even when we talk about DNA, though, it's made up of atoms and molecules, which is the formation of all of life. So life is chemistry, right? So the really important thing to remember about DNA, or the next thing I wanted to point out, is that these structures in the middle, these base pairs, there's only 4 of them: adenine, thymine, guanine, and cytosine. And why do I want to point that out to you is because I want you to understand that we have approximately 4.5 million species of living things discovered on the planet. We think that there are about 7 million different species. That means 6,999,999 more than humans of species on this planet. Pretty much most of them use DNA as their primary genetic material. So 4 base pairs code for all of the variety of life on this planet. That is amazing. And I like to think, well, how can we take 4 little base pairs and combine them and come up with all these different things? It's kind of like music. If you play an instrument or you sing or you've read music, you've got F-A-C-E, and I'm not a huge music person in terms of knowing all the ins and outs, but I remember from school F-A-C-E, face, stands for 4 of the notes, and then every good boy does fine, E, G, B, D, F, for the other notes. And if I'm not exactly right, I know I'm close. And yet we can put all these notes together and make any music we want, because we can keep adding them in any combination and any number of notes. And that's kind of the way the genetic code works. So what are these ATGCs? What do they code for? They code for amino acids. Amino acids are the building blocks of proteins. And pretty much living things, yeah, they're made of other stuff, but one of the major things they're made up are proteins. So when we talk about the structure of your skin as an organ, or your heart, or your muscles, or your nerve cells, there's lots and lots of proteins involved. And this DNA code codes for the amino acids in particular order, which thus codes for proteins. And we'll get more into protein synthesis another day, but just understand that DNA is the directions for life by coding for amino acids, which will be linked together in blocks, like the blocks of a building in a room, to make proteins. And different living things have different proteins, and that's how we get different structures and the variety of life.